Salutations, respected viewers. This is George from Ireland, and here I am, outside 36 Chesham Place, London. And that portico leads to the door of the house wherein Earl Russell lived, the man who was twice Prime Minister in the 19th century. So he was born in 1792, and he came from a prominent aristocratic family. They'd been eminent in the English Midlands for centuries. He was related to the Dukes of Bedford. So he's from a cadet branch of that family. And up until that time, Russell had only ever been a surname. After that, it became popular as a Christian name. So he was a Whig, and he entered Parliament at the age of 21 for a pocket borough. One of the topics that was fiercely disputed at the time was the Great Reform Act. Should the franchise, as in the right to vote, be extended to men of the middling sort? Only a few of the middle orders could vote. Almost none of the lower orders could vote. So a lot of constituencies were effectively in the hands of aristocrats. These landowners would say, people in this constituency must vote the way I want. You don't vote for my preferred candidate, I will evict you, or I will dismiss you from your employ. And there was no secret ballot, it was open voting. People had to declare who they're voting for. It was written down in a book, which is a very useful historical record. And the polls were open for 2 weeks. Anyhow, these elections were fractious and filthy affairs. But Russell came to believe that they ought to allow the bourgeoisie to vote, not the working class at that stage. But some said you'll be opening a door that you'll not be able to shut. More and more people will be allowed to vote, and these uneducated people, they will vote to deprive the mighty of their property. They will take away our civil liberty, and silver-tongued demagogues will be able to persuade people to vote against freedom, and all the rest of it with the downfall of civilization. Property, that is the palladium of liberty. Anyhow, Russell thought these arguments were not entirely meritless, but he also believed that some degree of reform was necessary. The country was in a pre-revolutionary situation. The cabinet received an anonymous letter which said, "Depend upon it, gentlemen, the country is ripe for revolution. Then goodbye to England's king and ministers." People really thought that the monarch and the cabinet might be put to the sword by the mob. Anyway, in 1832, the Great Reform Act was passed with Earl Grey, a Whig, as Prime Minister, because King George IV said to the House of Lords that if they did not pass this, he would flood the upper chamber with more people he would ennoble. And those with blue blood and broad acres did not want to be rubbing shoulders with the great unwashed, with people who were mere gentry and not really nobility being given hereditary titles. So Earl Russell, because he said, yes, we must have this reform, however, that it will be the last ever revision of our constitution. For that he was known as Finality Jack, because he emphasized it would be final. Another thing is the breed of dog, Jack Russell, is named after him. It's only about this time that breeds were emerging as people selectively bred dogs to look a certain way. So he was a very wealthy man, as you can tell, had many country estates, and he helped to form the Liberal Party. His son died very early, which is why his grandson, Bertrand Russell, was brought up by Earl Russell for the first few years. Bertrand Russell, the philosopher and the socialist. Bertrand Russell was only 6 when his grandfather passed away, so he grew up an orphan, effectively, a very rich one, brought up by tutors. So that is Earl Russell, a fascinating Victorian intellectual. Despite being Finality Jack, he also eventually agreed to the Second Reform Act of 1867. That was mainly a Tory thing.